Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Richard Skipper celebrates the best in entertainment. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Merry Christmas Eve. Happy whatever it is you're celebrating. Welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are here for the first time, my show is all about celebrating. Celebrating life, celebrating art, celebrating artists, celebrating whatever it is that we can find to celebrate in these dark times. And yes, they are dark, but I look for the light. And there are so many things that I want to talk about that I'm celebrating right now. First of all, I want to take you back, 1974. 1974, a great film came out called That's Entertainment. And at that time, I was 13 years old, and that introduced me to the glorious world of MGM. And I began to discover all of these great MGM films, and I threw myself into the world of MGM, and that was the world of show business that I truly wanted to be a part of. And I devoured everything that I could find. There was a nostalgia craze that was sweeping the country, and I read every book that I could find. There were all these television specials. It was the world of variety specials. So all those glorious MGM stars were part of that. I came to New York in 1979, and the world was changing as far as show business was concerned. But I have been very, very fortunate. And in the course of my life, I have had the good fortune to call many of those MGM stars my friend. One of my dear friends was Marlene Dietrich, who was one of the most glamorous stars of MGM. She lived just a few houses over from where I live. She was actually my astrologer, believe it or not. She passed away earlier this year. So I dedicate this show to her today and all of the glamorous stars of MGM. I also celebrate all of the people behind the scenes. For those of you who were in the theater, some of you may have been seeing all of the posts that have been on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram over the past few days. The president of the Broadway League made a comment a few days ago that was not so kind to the swings and the understudies of Broadway. I don't know that she intentionally meant to say those things. It just came out wrong. We all make mistakes. So we need to give her a little slack as well, especially this time of year. So I think she offered an apology. So I will accept her apology. And perhaps this is a learning curve for all of us. When we go to the theater and an understudy or a swing is announced, other than the star that we expected to see, let's celebrate that person because they've worked hard to get there. And I say this because today we are going to be celebrating the incredible Dottie Ponedel. There's this great book called About Face, and this covers the life and career of Dottie Ponedel, who is one of the people that was behind the scenes later in her career. She also started out as an actress, which we'll talk about. But on the show today, we have two people who worked on this book. And the first is Danny Miller. And I'm bringing him to the stage. And before we jump into the book and everything, I want to first of all welcome you to the show, Danny.
Thank you.
As I say in my introduction, I'm all about celebrating. This is the holiday season. In addition to that, what are you celebrating today?
Oh, well, I am celebrating the fact that though we're Jewish, our house looks like the Macy's windows at Christmas time. So we get into the holiday. We're excited about it. I have a 12-year-old son who's very excited about it. And also the great stars that you were talking about. It was also a huge thing for me in my childhood, the MGM stars.
Now, I asked, for a photograph. You were able to send me this photograph, and I love this photograph. Here you are on a plane with a camera.
Yep.
I don't know how old you are at this, but were you going to go into the world of film, or was it just a hobby for you?
There I am with my camera. It was on my first trip to California. I think I was 9. We were going to visit my father's best friend, who was a wonderful writer named Sam Bobrick. I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote lots of plays. He wrote for TV, Gomer Pyle, Get Smart, the Smothers Brothers show. So I was very excited. Yes, I did want to go into film, and I ended up majoring in radio, TV, film at Northwestern in Chicago, where I'm from. And I did come out here, but not till, in the 80s. But I got involved in educational stuff, publishing instead. But later on became a movie journalist for MSN Movies. So I got to interview many people. Also, my wife's family is a big theater TV family. Her mother is Elizabeth Forsythe Haley, who wrote A Woman of Independent Means. And her father was Oliver Haley, who was a playwright. And through her, I met the most exciting person I met was Betty Garrett, who was a good friend of theirs. And she was just fantastic. But also Barbara Rush, who remains a friend to this day. Carol Cook and Tom Troop, who I know you know.
Yes.
So got to hear a lot of great stories. And they knew everyone, of course. I remember once when...
No, you are seeing Carol and Tom tonight, aren't you?
We are.
So please give them my love. I had the good fortune. Carol and Tom are very dear friends of mine. I had the good fortune of producing her last show in New York, which will always be, hopefully not her last, but the last to this date that she's done in New York.
Legendary show that I wish I could have seen. I saw the version of it here in LA, but I heard nothing but great things about the show in New York.
So it was just an incredible time to bring her to New York. And she still is that old school Hollywood glamour. Betty Garrett, you mentioned from MGM. But you also have this love of MGM. You and I both talked about another incredible entertainer, Debbie Wildman. If you happen to be watching, there goes my Southern accent coming through, who has captured and brought through Judy Garland, who we are going to talk a lot about today. But Judy Garland, she's captured her. What is it about that era that captures you? And that will bring us to why you wanted to work on this book.
Yeah, I think my gateway to classic films when I was a kid, it was definitely That's Entertainment, the first one that came out, and then all of them. I remember going to see it in 70 millimeter at a theater in downtown Chicago. It was so exciting. That's what really made me want to see everything. And then there was also a film festival, the Chicago International Film Festival, one year in the 70s, honored Vincent Minnelli, who was still with us then. And I went to see him. And then in a smaller theater, they showed, I think, virtually every film he directed, which was, talk about a crash course. But, as a very young kid, of course, The Wizard of Oz, which was then a once a year big production, the annual TV event was hosted by Danny Kaye. Oh my God, those look real.
They are real to me.
Have you been hanging around the Academy Museum room?
No.
So that was a huge deal. And then Meet Me in St. Louis, and another gateway drug for me. My mother loved the Andy Hardy movies that I know not everyone, thinks is great art, but I love them. Not to go into a therapy session, but my parents' marriage was kind of ending and they were getting a divorce. And I think I lost myself like in the Hardy family, as the pure, wonderful, everything's solved by the end of the episode, the end of the film kind of thing. And of course, Judy Garland was suddenly there's Dorothy Gale as Betsy Booth in the Andy Hardy films. One day I'll show you I have a collection of Andy Hardy original MGM posters that I had restored years ago that are all over our house. So everyone here knows about Andy Hardy. And of course, that was a training ground for so many MGM stars, as you know, Esther Williams, Lana Turner, Katherine Grayson, all appeared through these movies. So they're all around my house as well.
Well, I want to talk, first of all, we're here today to celebrate the life and career of Dottie Ponedel, who was a phenomenal makeup artist. And we are so lucky because her niece is here waiting in the wings to come on, and I'm going to bring her on in a few moments. But what was your introduction to Dottie Ponedel, and how did this book come about, and how were you introduced to Meredith before I bring her on?
I did not know about Dottie Ponedel, who never got the credit she deserved until Meredith came. Every year there's a Turner Classic Movies Film Festival in Hollywood that if you haven't been, you should come. They're finally going to be in person again this April.
I introduced Jezebel at the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival. So yes, I've been there.
It's amazing. As you know, I mean, us classic movie fanatics look forward to it all year. And we have a Facebook group that has a party the day before the festival starts every year. And one year, Meredith came and had these amazing photographs of her Aunt Dottie with Judy Garland and Marlene Dietrich and others, and did a presentation, a short presentation, but I was so riveted and went up to her afterwards and just started talking. And in casual conversation, she said, "Oh, yeah, what do you do for a living?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a book editor." And I could just see her face like light up because I was super interested in her aunt. And unbeknownst to me, she had this massive collection of writings that she had helped her aunt with before her aunt's death that I'm sure she'll tell more about all this, that she was trying to wrangle into a book.
Well, let's bring her on because in the book, there she is, Meredith. The book opens with her pushing this cart of these boxes into her aunt's bedroom, I guess, with all of these photographs, and pulling, as a 5-year-old, I think you are, Meredith, these photographs saying, "And who is this? And who is this?" We're going to show some of those photographs in a few moments. But Meredith, welcome to the show, first of all. And thank you for being the torchbearer and keeping your aunt's memory alive for so many people who don't know who she is. So God bless you for doing this and keeping her out there. But I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Danny to start the show, because this is Richard Skipper Celebrates. What are you celebrating today?
My birthday, for one.
Is today your birthday?
Yes.
Happy birthday.
This is a wonderful birthday present, Richard. Thank you.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and I'm also getting ready to have my family over tomorrow for Christmas. And madly cleaning the house, which I do maybe once in a blue moon. So I'm uncovering dust where I never knew dust gathered. And just getting things taken care of and ready. And of course, enjoying watching all the wonderful Christmas movies on TCM, which I love.
And of course, as you're watching many of these movies, there was your aunt right behind those films, making those beautiful women and doing the makeup for some of those men as well, making them who they are. Let's go back, first of all, for those who don't know a little bit about your aunt, and talk about her place in Hollywood. I also love the fact that your book opens with a letter that she wrote to the Westmores in Hollywood, and saying that her only crime was being a woman. I mean, really
she actually said, "Please don't judge me for the crime of being a woman."
Yes, yes.
Because she was trying to get into the union. She had been in the union. And ever since she joined, they were trying to get her out. But luckily for her, because she had such powerful friends as Dietrich, Mae West, Lombard, Stanwyck, Joan Blondell, Judy came later, of course. They basically said, if you try to get Dottie out of the union, we're not going to come to work. And that actually happened. I had it corroborated one day when I was meeting with Frances D., who had been there at the time, and she assured me, oh yes, that actually happened, and everyone was in a big tizzy at the studio. When Dietrich and Mae West, who were the top breadwinners at the time, threatened to not work, you can imagine what the reaction was.
No, it's
so
very
Dot got into
interesting.
the union.
I mean, the detail in the book of you, God bless you, sitting down and talking with your aunt and being able to record these incredible stories. Your aunt was there at the beginnings of Hollywood. And as your aunt says in the book, but I was 2 when I began. But she came from Chicago.
Yes.
She came to Hollywood before Hollywood was even Hollywood. And as the film industry was beginning, she was there at the very beginning and started out doing, as many people do, just getting odd jobs, doing whatever she could do for no other reason but to basically survive in Hollywood at the time. And
yeah, she came out in 1920, I believe, and she and her mother came out for health reasons. Dot's health wasn't good in cold, snowy Chicago, and she needed to get to a warmer climate. So yeah, they picked here. And she actually was able to land a job in a Vandecamp's bakery, which the building of which is still standing, isn't it, Danny? It's right across the street from Langer's, right across from MacArthur Park in downtown LA. And that's how everything started. She would see these people line up at the bus stop, which is still there, in the morning, and she, they would run in and buy donuts and whatever to take to work with them. And she befriended someone who happened to be an extra in the movies. And Dot didn't know what that was, but she very quickly found out, and that's how it all started.
Well, it's interesting because, and I've said this in other interviews, some of my staunch followers are here watching. Davis Gaines, an incredible entertainer that I've had on the show, said that going into this business, you map out a career plan, and then it's very much like being in a pinball machine. You find you're being bandied about, and I look at your aunt's career, and early on, I pretty much see your aunt very much like that. She went with the flow. She knew the right people to talk to, and when an opportunity came her way, she grabbed it and she went with it.
Yes.
Whether you call that ambition or whatever, I would say that she was a modern woman way ahead of her time.
Oh, she definitely was. Definitely was. She was self-taught as far as makeup was concerned. She was self-taught as far as the dancing she learned to do on the silent films she was in. She had never ridden a horse in her life. When the director put her on a horse in a Western, she was playing an Indian helper to the star, which I believe was Bob Steele or Bob Custer at the time. And the director came up and, you have to ride up this hill. Can you ride a horse? Oh, sure, I can ride a horse. Never been on a horse in her life, but she knew better than to say that. So she always told me, you just do what you have to do to get where you want to go.
And she also became a horse. But she was also a stunt woman. I mean, she was doing stunts that were like very dangerous stunts early on in her career.
I don't believe they had actual stunt union at that point in time. And if you wanted to work and make a living, such as it was, I believe she got $5 a day, something like that. She was jumping off hills and jumping onto horses and jumping into creeks. And one of the scenes was a cave-in of some sort, and she was in the middle of that. And she just went ahead and did what she wanted to do.
Now, before we go into the evolution of her career and how the makeup aspect of it, I want to talk about the two of you and the process. You meet at the TCM Festival. Meredith finds out about you, Danny, and what you do, how did the process begin for both of you?
Well, as Danny explained, I met him after my talk was over. He came over, we started talking. I asked him what he did. He said he was a writer and a book editor, and he's right. My eyes went, ooh, I'm grabbing this one. And he was interested when I explained to him what the project was, and we just took off from there. He was incredibly instrumental in keeping me on the ground and not floating off into the sky somewhere with my ideas, and going through the huge notebooks of material that I have and winnowing out which to keep and which not to keep and how to get it all put together. Weren't you,
And I
Danny?
must say, when I first got those amazing stories in these just sheets and sheets of papers and notebooks, it was like seeing the Dead Sea Scrolls or something, because these were stories that like no one had ever seen. First person stories of these people. It's like, I think this is the last book that contains first person stories of Judy Garland, Marlene Dietrich, Erich von Stroheim, Carole Lombard. It was just amazing to read. It was so thrilling.
And Danny, had you done other books prior to this? And I know that in your acknowledgments at the beginning of the book, you thank Bear Mountain Press for this book, and you acknowledge the fact that so many other books that they've done, and I have many of their books on my shelves, that you, to be a part of that family means so much to you. What is it about Bear Mountain Press that you wanted to work with them? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did that come about?
Well, initially through Meredith, right? You made contact with Ben Omert.
Yes.
I mean, and of course, I loved all their books too. You know, a small press that focuses on the kinds of things and people that we so admired was, thrilling to find. They were very supportive throughout, did not have a heavy hand in what we were doing at all, and just allowed us to tell Dottie's story the way that Meredith wanted to.
I felt that was very important. I had been working with a couple of other publishers, a university press in particular. We thought it was going to happen. However, they wanted to change the narrative and how things were said. And I said, no, we have to keep it in Dottie's voice. And then when I talked to Ben at Bear Manor Media, he let me do what I needed to do, and it was wonderful.
One thing that I loved about Dottie and Meredith, even though there's so much, this book is so chock full of like just fascinating stories, the last thing she was like a gossip. I mean, the reason all these stars trusted her so much is because you tell Dottie Ponedel something that you don't want other people to know, they're never going to know it. There were even some anecdotes that like alluded to stuff like, oh, Meredith, what's that about? Like I couldn't get it out of her. Even just to me. One day I will. There's a couple little things. But
actually, there's parts of the book that have been destroyed that no one will ever see.
Oh, no, just leave it in your will.
Dottie made lists of people, of categories she wanted to remind herself of, and I won't even tell you what the categories were, but all that has been totally, it's not even on the computer. They're just ripped up and gone.
Wow, okay, I'll get you in a session with a couple of drinks one day.
Good luck.
Well, I mean, I will say, with all due respect to you, to Danny, that's one of the things, and it even says in my introduction to my show that I'm not gossipy, because to me, it's about the process. I admire someone like this, and being a confidant in Hollywood is a very difficult thing as well. And it takes a while to build up trust in Hollywood, especially when someone, when you're in this business, and I've been on both sides of the business, you trust people, and then the very people that you trust, and Meredith and I have talked about this in depth, because we've dealt with it recently, and we're not going to go any further than that, where the very people that you trust can try to bring you down. So to find someone like a Dottie Ponedel in your life is a very important thing. And she did build these relationships. I want to talk about how she moved. And we don't want to give away too much because we want people to buy the book. How she transitioned from being this phenomenal, actress that was doing all these other jobs to becoming a makeup artist. And either one of you can take the reins with this story.
She was never one to be quiet if she saw a need to open her mouth. I think I inherited that from her. She was on the set of Follow Through with Nancy Carroll and Jack Haley, of all people.
Yes.
And she overheard the director discussing how to light Nancy Carroll. They were having some trouble with a certain scene. And Dot opened her mouth and said, do this and this and this. And they looked at her like, who the hell are you? But they tried it, or Nancy tried it, and it worked. So this was in 1929. So what happened after that was Nancy wanted Dot to do her makeup the next day. And the production office said, no, she's not in the union. She's a woman. I mean, who ever heard of a woman makeup artist? We can't do this. So Nancy deliberately screwed up her own makeup. They couldn't do the shoot. And Nancy said, well, if you hire this little girl, this little Dottie Ponedel person, I can get it done. And Nancy was a big enough star that that's what they did. And that's how it started.
But there's a particular star, and you can say it simultaneously together. I'm going to see if we are all on the same page, that you think that really put her on the map.
Dietrich.
Yeah,
Marlene.
Yes. And I actually am going to pull up a photograph here. And here they are together. Sorry that this covered you up, Danny.
But cover me up anytime.
Yes. And here they are together. And you describe, and this is one of the other things that I love. You describe in detail, or I should say, Dottie describes in detail how she created the Dietrich look, because the Dietrich look did not happen just from Dietrich appearing on camera when she was first brought to Hollywood. If you can talk a little bit about the transition from what she originally looked like when she came and what Dottie did to create the Dietrich look.
You want to take that one, Danny?
Oh gosh, no, I think you better. Although I must say that there's some parts in the book where the technique is described using the pats of the fingers. I mean, like literally one pressure point too much, it's ruined. And boy,
exactly.
She treated Marlene Dietrich's face like the most glorious canvas on the face of the earth, because I mean, who was more beautiful in those films?
Well, that's how Dottie regarded her clients, as canvases to be worked on. And she had studied great art. She had studied especially portraits and the lighting and the shadows. And that's what she was working on with Dietrich. She saw what needed to be done. Her face needed to have more contour than it did. She had to bring out certain features. She had beautiful eyes, but they were overshadowed, shall we say. So she started doing the plucking, which a lot of people overdid. Dot didn't overdo it. That came later. People saw what Dot had done and they went way too far. But she experimented with the colors, and she knew what colors worked with Dietrich: under the eye, down the bridge of the nose, the eyelids, that kind of thing. And she just did what worked. You know, it didn't necessarily come out full blown the first time, but they tried and they experimented and they found what worked the best.
Now, there's a moment in the book where, and I love this, Meredith, where you asked your aunt about, and this, of course, goes back a few years. It's even gone even further since you asked this question about today's stars, and I put that in air quotes, versus the stars of yesteryear. And her response was just incredible, because I'm on the same page with this. Do you want to address that?
Basically, she felt that there was just no glamour anymore. There was no mystery. They let it all hang out in more ways than one, and that was not a look she favored. She had worked in the era when women were, I don't say this in a demeaning way, but they were ladies. They were elegant, they had class. They very much knew who they were as women. It was not an identity issue. They were very strong-minded, strong-willed women who wanted to look decent out in public. I used to get in trouble all the time. I would be in my teens running out the door, and you're wearing that? Yeah, no, go back and change. Okay, that kind of thing. But she wanted women makeup, hair. It doesn't take more than another minute to make sure your hair is brushed and combed and in place, and go out looking like you want to present yourself to the world.
Well, it's interesting. I do a lot of live events, and sometimes people will ask, how should I dress for the event? And my response is always, dress the way you want to be photographed. Because a lot of people, especially in today's world, where everybody has an iPhone and people are taking photographs. How many times have we seen photographs where people are taking unflattering photographs of people at the supermarket or something, which I hate. It drives me crazy when someone takes a photograph of someone they don't know because they're wearing something unflattering or something and they post it on social media. I hate it. I think it's wrong. Don't do it. But people do it. You never know when you're going to be photographed, when you're going to be out in public or everything. I went on a complete diet regimen after I saw a photograph of me this summer that I just went, I can't, I hated the way I looked in this photograph. And it is a different way of the way that we are seen. But I also loved the comfort level that Marlene Dietrich had about herself, her body, the way that she was comfortable. I love the fact that she was completely comfortable in the dressing room. When someone will walk in the dressing room, Dottie would throw her a pillow to cover herself up.
Well, Dietrich was, she was right. The human body is nothing to be ashamed of, whatever form it's in.
Right,
and
exactly.
Dietrich knew that on a very deep level, and she, and that's a good thing for a woman to understand and to feel.
And but the other stars that there were many other stars, but then the transition to MGM, Danny, Meredith, the transition and how she got there, and then I want to talk very much about her relationship with Judy Garland.
She, from what I have been completely able to find out, and I have some suspicions that she actually worked with Judy a little earlier than is commonly known, but I haven't been able to prove anything. The story goes that Vincent Minnelli, had heard about Dot. Everybody had heard about Dot because I have numerous newspaper articles and magazine articles about her, starting in the late 20s, early 30s. And he specifically wanted her to work with Judy, who had not been treated too well by some of the makeup artists at MGM and was rather self-conscious about her looks. And so Minnelli brought Dot over to meet her. Actually, Sidney Gilleroff brought Dot literally over to meet Judy, and Judy walked in and handed her little paraphernalia that they stuck up her nose and on her lips and wherever else they put whatever they needed to put. And Dot took a look and she said, "What the hell are these things?" And Judy said, "Well, this is what they need me to." And she said, "Forget it." She just cut her right off. She literally tossed them in the trash. And she said, "You're a pretty girl. You don't need this junk." And then proceeded to work from there. And Judy was hers from then on.
Well,
especially when she saw how beautiful she looked at several of the key scenes in Meet Me in St. Louis.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Judy, to me, I'm such a huge fan of Judy's, but I've always thought, even in her early films, I mean, she was a beautiful young girl, and the trauma that was placed on her at MGM. Not only was she told by mostly men that she was unattractive, that she was overweight, that she was a hunchback, that she was an ugly duckling, but those lines were even put in the scripts. in those early films leading up to The Wizard of Oz, that it had to have taken its toll on her.
I'm sure it did to a degree, but that's one of the reasons she and Dot became so close, because Dot did not feel that way. She felt that every woman was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
There are different ways to bring out beauty, not necessarily how you look, it's how you feel. Dietrich used to tell her all the time, if you feel beautiful, you will look beautiful. It comes from the inside out, not the outside in.
We have a few photographs. Thank you, Danny, for sending the photographs here. We have, here they are. And of course, this is, I think, Jack Cummings. Is this?
Jack Benny.
Jack Benny.
Jack Benny.
Yes. And Judy and Joan Blondell. And look at your aunt. You two have the same smile.
That's what everyone tells me.
It's amazing. There it is. And I love this film. Of course, this is Annie, Get Your Gun.
Yes.
And of course, Judy, unfortunately, did not complete this film. Did your aunt ever talk about this film? And, and of course, those of us who are huge Judy fans know that this is a film that should never have started in the first place, for a lot of reasons, unless they had given her a little time to get ready for the film, which they did not do.
No, they didn't. And that's basically what Dot felt too. That and the fact that the director they chose was not the best choice for Judy. But Dot would say if they had just let her relax for a little bit, she would have been fine. As you can see from a couple of those photographs, she was actually okay for quite a bit of it. But when they started to browbeat her and wouldn't give her a break, that's the problem. I love this picture. I just love that one.
Me too.
Yeah. I actually still have that container that's behind them.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You can definitely see the real friendship that's there. I mean, let's face it, on one level, your makeup artist in those days was like your therapist, but not everyone had the same level of friendship that Dottie had with the women that she worked with. And you can just see it in the photographs, the laughing, the love that they had for each other.
And it continued. It was, as I was growing up in Dot's house, people she had worked with 30 years prior, Gail Patrick and Frances D, Judy, of course, Joan Blondell, these people would come and visit. And I never knew who would be in the house when I came home from school. Some of them I adored. Some of them, Gail Patrick was a lovely, warm, caring person. She was gorgeous. But for some strange reason, Dot always had her bring me clothes. And as a little kid, when someone's carrying a package of clothes as opposed to a toy. So she was not my favorite person. I don't want another petticoat,
Wow. When Dottie and Judy first met, did the relationship take off immediately, or did Dottie have to earn Judy's trust in her? I mean, she was at a studio where Judy was constantly having to fight her way. Unfortunately, how did that relationship eventually unfold?
I think it started out pretty quickly. I remember one of the people that visited Dot was George Folsey, the photographer on that, the cinematographer. And I would sit and listen to the two of them talk. And he once looked at me and said, as an aside, Minnelli did direct the film, and he directed it beautifully. But George Folsey said, Minnelli only thinks he directed the film. Dot and I actually put it together. And they were referring to especially the window scene where she's singing The Boy Next Door, because that is Judy was made up beautifully and obviously lit and photographed beautifully. But listening to the two of them talk, I really got an education as to how lighting and makeup go hand in hand, and how a lot of them just work together, especially if you get a director like Minnelli who could totally trust his crew to do the right thing, and he would give them a lot of leeway because he knew they would work out to everyone's benefit. So Judy loved the way she looked, obviously. But there was another incident, which I think is in the book, isn't it, Danny? The one with Fanny Bryce and the meat,
So,
where they were working on was it Ziegfeld Follies of
Ziegfeld Follies.
1946?
Yes.
Yeah, which was actually shot 2 years prior,
Yes,
a year
that's
and
right.
a half prior, during the war. And one day Fanny Bryce didn't show up. Where's Fanny Bryce? They went to find Dot, said, Judy said to Dot, let's go find her. You know, Judy just got notions in her head like that. Let's go find Fanny Bryce. So they went to her house. They walked in, and here's Fanny with a butcher in her kitchen with entire sides of cows. My cat is about to visit, with entire sides of cows hanging from the ceiling of the kitchen, being cut up because she knew there was going to be a meat shortage and she wanted to make sure her family had food.
And
So,
that was much more important than shooting a scene about a ticket.
well, you know, Fanny Bryce had come up through the ranks. She had not started out wealthy, and she knew what it was like to go hungry, and she was going to be damn sure she had food for the duration. But the thing was, Dot and Judy looked at each other, and they both burst out laughing. And at that point, Dot knew she had a partner in crime, more or less. And Judy led her on all sorts of shenanigans, you know, from that point on. And Dot was a willing partner.
Meredith, at what point did you decide that you wanted to tell your aunt's story and that you felt that it was important to get her story out to a bigger audience?
Well, I had helped Dot write the book initially. When Judy died, I was only 13, and I would come home from the drugstore with Photoplay and Modern Screen and all these movie magazines that existed at the time. And I would read the headlines to Dot, and I would read some of the stories. Oh, Judy did this, and she would get so mad because she said, that's not true. I ordered her food at the commissary, and people didn't say that, and this, whatever. She just got angry, and she decided she wanted to write the truth about who Judy was, not only Judy, but all of them. And who they were as people. I did not know until Judy passed away who she was. I really didn't have a clue. I knew she had made a couple of movies. I knew she had a TV show. Until I was 9 or 10, I think it was, when the Ed Sullivan Show came on, where she sang Smile at the Palladium. I remember she came on, she got, I think, a standing ovation right when she walked out. And I turned to my father and I said, why are they applauding Judy? And he said, for the great things she's done in the past. And I looked at him, I said, well, what's she done? And she said, he said, she's a great singer. And she is? He goes, yeah. You know, didn't know. I really didn't. So it wasn't until she passed away and I was getting all this information that I really knew of her career. And Dot sat down one day and said, here, let's start writing. And she started to write. Dot was rather difficult to work with by then. She wanted things told in her own voice, in her own way. And when the first couple of editors she worked with, and other people were trying to help her, Joan Blondell, Vincent Minnelli, Johnny Engstead, even Pasternak and Arthur Freed had sent her editors and people to work with because they all knew about the book and they wanted it out there. Dot didn't want anything changed. So she kept sending people away. No, you can't change this. And I was all of 15, 16 years old, and I thought, well, you know, she's wrong. I found out later she was right. Thank you, Danny. Yeah, but so periodically I would take it out and try to work with it, but it was just way beyond me. And I had a couple people helping along the way, and nothing really clicked until I met Danny and we got it put together. But it wasn't until I found the letter, which I hadn't found right away, but the letter you mentioned at the beginning that she wrote to the Westmores, please don't judge me for the crime of being a woman, among other things. She talks about integrity and honor in her profession, which was extremely important to her. it wasn't until I found that letter that I really got serious. It was like, oh my God, this has to come out now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, her struggle. I have interoffice memos from people at MGM, and I won't mention names, who as late as 1950 were telling her to watch her back because so-and-so is out to get her.
No, it's amazing. Well, I was watching Being the Ricardos the other night. Have either of you watched it yet?
Not yet. I want to.
And I am going to go on record to say I love it. But there are a couple of moments in the film that really got me. Lucy being fired from RKO after the big street because they don't know what to do with her. Fighting to get Desi Arnaz as her husband. It's Hollywood, folks. Judy Garland, you know, at CBS, fighting to be herself when she had her TV series. These things go on because everyone feels that they know you better than you know yourselves. All of us go through life.
They're wrong.
Right? And they're wrong. And they're wrong.
I remember a lot of what happened at CBS and how she would come to the house a couple of times and be extremely upset. Some of the time I was only 8, but some of the time I was able to sort of stand in the wings around the corners of the house and listen. There were a few times when I was definitely sent to my room, go to your room, shut the door and stay there. Okay. You know, because I knew darn well I didn't want to be around what was going on. But I just was aware that people were not treating her well, and that made me very angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's such a shame. I mean, because she had so much to offer, and she did. She gave and gave and gave. And but again, I mean, when did you know that the book was ready, if you'll pardon the expression, to give birth, to release it to the world? There's
when
so
Danny
much.
told me, I kept throwing things at Danny. Said, "Here, I found more." Oh, poor Danny! I found another notebook, Danny. There's more stories, and he had to go through piles of stuff to winnow out what was in one notebook may not have been in the other, and something may have been told differently. And so I just trusted him, and every now and then we would meet over breakfast. It was great. And I would either give him more stuff or he would show me what he had done. And at one point, finally, he said, I think this is it. And I said, okay. So I trusted him.
I want to ask you both, has TCM done a celebration of Dottie Ponedel?
No, they haven't. Several years ago, somebody at TCM did try to make it happen. Unfortunately, again, I'm not going to go into any detail, but I believe there were some political things going on behind the scenes, and it just wasn't going to happen. And that's fine with me. You know, I'm not, you know, enough people have heard me and seen me and talked to me about what went on there with Dot and Judy and everybody else at MGM and Paramount. And interestingly enough, Dot, I found out, was not, and she was never under contract to MGM. She was under private contract to Judy, and I have copies of those contracts.
So
and
she never got screen credit?
No, she didn't care. I asked her once, because my dad, who was also a makeup artist, got some screen credit on some of the Sinatra movies he worked on. And I asked Dot, why didn't you tell Judy you just wanted your name out there? And she said, as long as they spelled my name right on the paycheck, I didn't care. So that's what.
Well, I must say it burns me that she didn't get the screen credit, or really any credit, because of some of the savory characters in the makeup world back then. When we were working on the book, I did a lot of research at the USC film archives on the campus, where they have the entire Arthur Freed collection. So I was going through the original boxes of all the studio documents and correspondence for all of Judy's films at MGM. And, there's constant mention of her memos, but they would not give her credit because of the other makeup artists who shall go unnamed, but everyone knows who they are at MGM. And I have to say that burns me. I know she didn't care, and she had such a great attitude about it, and her thing was about the relationships, but I think she should have been more heralded. And, you know, we are coming into Judy's centennial year. So I don't know, maybe something with TCM and Dottie. Let's hope.
Well,
I
John
think Dot should
Christie
get a
has a
special
relationship
Oscar.
with TCM. We got to make it happen. Let's do it. Let's make
All
it
right.
happen this year. Everybody, let's start a letter writing campaign. Let's make it happen.
I'm willing. I would love it.
Okay.
I would love it.
I'm on board for this. So we are going to run out of time. And but before we end, I always end my show with my homage to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio.
Yes.
So I've got my round of questions that I'm going to lead to both of you just for the fun of it. And I'm going to start with just some random questions for each of you. And the first question is for you, Danny. And the question is, did you ever worry your parents when you were growing up?
You know, I was the good one for good and ill in my family. So that came later, not so much growing up.
Okay. And Meredith, who is the one entertainer that you wish that you could see on stage, either past or present?
My first response was going to be Judy because I never saw her on stage, only singing at my house. That's tough.
Now listen to that. Only singing at my house.
I would, you know, actually, I would have loved to have seen Lorette Taylor.
You and me both. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And Danny, this is a question that's going to be specific about Dottie. What do you think Dottie most looked forward to and regretted from your research about growing older, especially in Hollywood, where looks, and I mean, she was a makeup artist, where looks are part of the culture, the process. What do you think that she most looked forward to? And of course, this is all speculation, just based on your own research.
Well, sadly, she became ill later in life, which is why her career ended. But I mean, I think with her, it was always the friendships. She remained such close friends with people like Joan Blondell and Judy until Judy's death, as Meredith well knows, because she was there as a little girl, you know, getting to go grocery shopping with Joan Blondell. I mean, can you imagine? So I think it was all about the relationships that really carried her through until the end.
Wow. Meredith, this question is for you. Where do you think that, when do you think that she was most shocked in her career?
Wow, that's tough. Shocked. I would say maybe later in her career when she would be traveling with Judy, especially the London episodes, London, Scotland, all those by, again, I don't want to go into too much detail really, but there were certain attitudes that sometimes Judy would have that Dot couldn't understand. And she would be kind of shocked by some of the things that was said and went on. But she kept on going. Nothing stopped her. You know, she just did what she had to do. She ended up leaving Judy in London and flying home, even though they were supposed to take a ship together. Dot was like, okay, I'm done. We're gone. And she just flew to New York and then flew on to California. Wow. Leaving Judy to wonder, where the hell did you go?
Wow. Danny, this question is for you. What was your greatest find in terms of working on this book?
You know, there were so many amazing details in these files and just everything that I was reading. But one day at USC in their photo archives, I found this series of photos of Dot in the silent movie days that I loved. That was just really exciting to see her come to life as this actress in the silent films, which unfortunately most of those films are gone. We're still hoping to uncover them.
A couple do exist.
Yeah. it was, everything about it was so exciting to have these people like Judy Garland come to life in a totally different way. I've read all the big biographies about her, and it paints a certain picture. Some are better than others. Meredith would be happy to give you a list of ones to never grace your doorstep. But
I know some of those books myself.
yeah, I just saw a real friendship before my eyes, and a beautiful, beautiful friendship, and just amazing, strong women that was very inspiring.
That's great.
That's what Dot wanted me to know these people as more than anything. She wanted me, that's why I never knew until much later. I knew that they were the pictures. That's how I referred to when I finally met again Frances D. Oh, she's one of the pictures, because that's how I knew her. We had pictures of her. But Dot wanted me to know them as people and not as clients, not as commodities, not as movie stars. They were her friends. First and foremost, they were her friends. And I think it's a testament to Dot's being able to be trusted, and her, not only her artistry, but her sense of friendship and camaraderie, that people were still visiting her 20 and 30 years later.
Wow, that's wonderful. I love that. That's really great. Meredith, this question is for you. What do you think was the biggest regret of Dottie's life or career?
Getting MS and losing the ability to walk.
Wow.
When she first got it, it was even worse in a way, because she woke up and she couldn't see. And she lost the use of her hands and arms and her eyesight. That gradually came back, but her legs never fully came back. So she was in a walker. And then when I was about 9, she ended up in a wheelchair. So that was her, because she used to tell me, if I had my legs, we'd travel all over the world, that kind of thing. And she just couldn't do it.
Well, God bless her. And God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Danny, who was, from everything that you've read, and, and perhaps you've answered this question today, but who do you think was the greatest love of her life overall, in terms of the people that she worked with in her career?
Boy, I'm sure Meredith has an opinion, but so many. But I would have to say Marlene and Judy. These were very special relationships. Would you agree?
Probably Judy and Joan. Marlene too, because they were always in touch, and Paulette Goddard.
Yeah.
Carole, of course, Carole Lombard. To the day Dot died, she couldn't talk about Carole Lombard without crying.
Wow.
She just would get so upset if people brought, she'd love to talk about her and how much fun she was. And she told me a couple of great stories, and my dad did too, because my dad worked with her, some of the pranks she pulled on set. But then she would start to cry. Wow. She missed her. She really missed her.
And Meredith, this is for you. Who do you think she would say was the easiest person that she worked with in her career?
Oh, wow. None of them.
Oh my God, I love you.
I remember she mentioned Ruth Chatterton. She loved working with her because she was easygoing. She always had hot food ready. She took care of people, that kind of thing. So I know she enjoyed Ruth Chatterton. She loved Paulette. Paulette was a blast. Probably Lombard too, one of them, and she and Joan were great friends. I don't know about being easy to work with, but she and Joan were very close friends up until, I knew Joan, as Danny said, I have my own stories of getting in trouble with Joan, lots of trouble, but going places with her and doing things. So one particular easy person, Minnelli, because Minnelli trusted his people. I didn't know until I was talking to Margaret O'Brien one day that Dot designed the scenes for the Halloween scene in Meet Me in St. Louis. She came up with the outfits and the makeup for the kids. I had no idea. Dot was not one to blow her own horn. She was very content to stay in the background. And Margaret was telling me that, didn't you know Dottie had people working for her to help her design? I I did not know this at all.
Amazing. Wow. And this is a question for both of you. What conventional wisdom in Hollywood do you most disagree with? And I'm going to start with you, Danny, and then I'm going to ask you, Meredith, the same question.
Gosh, I would just say the obsession on youth culture. I am so excited every time there's a film starring some of our older actors and actresses that I'm beside myself. So, that's just crap. So that's what I would say.
I'm with you on that one. I thank you for saying that. And you, Meredith?
I would probably agree with that because these older actors and actresses, and yes, I still use the term actress. I'm old-fashioned that way. They have so much to offer, and the fact that they may get passed over just because they're, God forbid, past 40. I mean, give me a break. Can you imagine somebody again mentioning Lorette Taylor, somebody turning her down because she was too old? No, look what she did in The Glass Menagerie. It was amazing.
Wow.
So
wow. I want to
share people out there and get them working.
I want to share something with both of you, and then I'm going to say my closing remarks. Don't go anywhere for a moment. When I was a kid, I had an incredible mentor, Florence Epps. I've got a picture right here. Here she is, right there. She was my teacher. This is her at the Pasadena Playhouse. But she had the chance. She was signed at MGM, but she didn't want to be an actress. She came back to my hometown because she wanted to bring theater to my hometown. And she had a playhouse in her backyard. And I used to go to her, I used to study with her. And when I'd go to her house and would read, and she would mention a name like Lorette Taylor. And if I didn't know who they were, she would close the book and she would say, I will see you next Thursday. Know who she is. And this was in the days before Google. And I would go to the library. There was a very small theater section. But as I said in my introduction, it was the nostalgia craze. So a lot of new biographies were coming in. And the librarians knew me and they would always say, Ricky, as I was called, we have a new book in by Evelyn Keyes or Ann Miller or the latest new biography that came in. And I devoured every book that I could get. And Miss Epps instilled in me, she said, every time you walk on stage, and I feel this now in front of the camera, you are carrying the mantle of these great artists with you. And it's important that we remember who they are and what they brought to the industry. And that's what Danny and Meredith are doing. These names, these people, if there are any names today that you don't remember, go and look them up, check out their films, read books about them, know who they are and the contributions that they made to film. Danny and Meredith, it means the world to me that on Christmas Eve morning that you both said yes to me. So this is a gift to me. And happy birthday, Meredith.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody who said yes to being here today. You could have been anywhere else. You could have been shopping. You could have been baking. You could have been watching another podcast somewhere else. But you said yes to us. So I say thank you. If this is your first time here at Richard Skipper Celebrates, I hope that it will not be your last. On my page on YouTube, there's a button that says join in the celebration. Please click on it. Check out the other people that I've celebrated and come back. Leave a comment here on YouTube about this show. Share this with your friends. Help build our audience. And then there's something else I want you to do. I want you to go to Amazon.com and I want you to order 2 copies of About Face. I want you to order 1 copy for yourself. You're going to thank me. And then I want you to order 1 copy for the 6th name that pops up on your Facebook friends list. And then you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to call that 6th friend and you're going to tell them what they mean to you. Not an inbox message, not a private message, not an email message, but a phone call. And you're going to tell them what they mean to you because that's what this book is about. It's not just about a makeup artist at MGM. It's about friendships. That's what I got out of this book. And whether that was their intent or not, that's what I got out of this book. So it's all about friendships. As my dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. Now, I am going to leave the screen, and I'm going to give Danny and Meredith the final word. I'm going to, first of all, Danny, you're going to have your final word, and then I'm going to take you off screen when you say goodbye. And then Meredith, you've got the final word. Don't worry about how to end the show. As soon as you say goodbye, I will take you off screen. Thank you all for being here, everyone. Be kind to one another. Go out and create good in the world. That's what we're all here for. If you see a negative comment on social media, hit the hide button. If somebody continues to make those negative comments, block them, hide them for 30 days, do whatever you can, but let's build each other up. That's my wish for all of you this holiday season. Thank you all. And now, Danny, you've got the stage for yourself.
Thank you, Richard. I just have this gut feeling that Dottie would have loved you and what you're doing here in the world. And I only wish she was here to do an hour with you herself and tell some of her stories in the way that she could. But I really appreciate being on here, and happy birthday, Meredith, and Merry Christmas to all.
Hi, everyone. Richard, your final words there were so wonderful and so true. And Dot would so appreciate your wanting people to share her story and just have to call and express their friendship to one another, because that is truly what she was all about. They weren't just clients to her, all the people she worked with, they were friends. And there was nothing more important than friendship and trust in a friendship, which is why they lasted for so long. So Merry Christmas to everyone, and I had a wonderful time, and we'll see you all again sometime.